Liam couldn't remember the last time he saw the sky. Not that he'd forgotten what it looked like. No. It was just that for 3 months this milky grey, impenetrable fog had hung over Silent Haven. It had enveloped the island abruptly, like a blanket. After that flash no one could really explain. Just a bright, blinding light, then a deafening, ringing silence. And the fog. Liam, a former cartographer whose life was built on logic and measurement, now lived in a world where neither logic nor measurement held any meaning. His maps, once precise to the millimeter, were now useless scraps of paper. He'd come here half a year ago, seeking solitude and inspiration on this god-forsaken island. He found it. Too much of it. His hand grazed the cold, damp cover of his journal. Every evening he tried to write something down, to keep from losing his mind, to somehow record the slipping reality. August 21st. Day 90. The fog hasn't lifted. Nothing new. Food for a week, maybe a week and a half if I ration heavily. The generator is sputtering. Yesterday, Henry from across the street disappeared. Just walked out his door and didn't come back. His wife, Evelyn, said she heard him call her name. Then silence. She didn't cry. No one cries anymore. The voices. They've grown stronger. I hear them even through the dogs barking and the gulls' cries. They call my name. Sometimes it's Mason's voice, the old lighthouse keeper. He was like a father to me here. Liam, boy, come on out. It's so quiet and peaceful out here. Come home. I know it's not him. Liam put down his pen. Mason's voice sounded so clear in his head, as if the old man stood right behind him, his raspy laugh echoing in the small, dusty room. Liam pressed his temples. This was worse than madness. This was madness trying to convince you it was sanity. He stood and walked to the dusty window. The grey shroud of fog clung to the town, obscuring the ocean, the lighthouse, the horizon. It swallowed not only sight, but also sound. The roar of the surf, the cries of the gulls, all were now just faint echoes in memory. But the voices, those new voices, were crystal clear. The first weeks after the flash were chaos, panic, desperate attempts to escape, despair. Then came acceptance, the worst state of all. The residents of Silent Haven had split into 2 groups, the waiters, those who clung to any hope, believing the fog would lift and everything would return to normal. They often stood at the edge of the fog, whispering into the void, waiting, and one by one, they disappeared. The resistors, those who recognized the horror of the situation. They locked their doors, plugged their ears, tried to live normal lives, ignoring the persistent whispers that seeped through the walls. Liam was one of them. He set out on his daily rounds, checking the dwindling food supplies in the empty shops. The streets were deserted. Some houses stood with open doors, like toothless mouths. Their occupants had long since gone into the fog, or had been taken. As he passed the old fishing shack, a familiar melody drifted through the air, a lullaby his mother used to sing to him as a child. The voice was exactly hers, soft, loving, full of care. Liam, my boy, why are you so far away? Come to me. It's so warm here, so safe. You need to rest. He squeezed his eyes shut, clenching his fists. It was unbearable. His mother's voice, a voice he hadn't heard in almost 20 years, but he knew it was a lie, a cold, terrifying lie. It wasn't her. It was it. He quickened his pace, his heart hammering. With every step, the voice grew louder, more insistent, joined by other whispers, barely discernible, blending into a monotonous chorus. He heard the laughter of unfamiliar children, snippets of other people's conversations, the creak of old boats, the chime of bells that once hung above the bakery door. All of Silent Haven seemed to project its old sounds to confuse him, to lure him. Finally, he reached the town square. There, by the fountain, sat Evelyn, Henry's wife. She stared into the fog, her eyes vacant. "He's calling me, Liam," she whispered, without turning. His voice, it's just like it used to be. Gentle. He's asking me to come out. Says he's waiting. Liam approached her. "Evelyn, it's not him. You know that." She shook her head. "But it's his voice. How can I not believe him?" This was their greatest weakness. The voices always appealed to the deepest memories, to the most profound attachments. There was no force capable of resisting that call except for the complete realization that it was not what it pretended to be. But few could maintain such clarity of mind. Liam returned to his small observatory on the outskirts of town. Before the flash, he had spent days and nights here, studying the starry sky. Now the telescope was useless. Beyond it, there was only the fog. He spread an old, detailed map of Silent Haven across the table, one he had drawn himself. Every house, every street, every rock along the coast was marked with meticulous precision. He pulled out a red marker and began to mark the disappearances. Dot, dot, another one. The map began to resemble a macabre constellation. The disappearances were not random. They happened not only at the edge of the fog, they happened within the town. Suddenly. From houses. From streets. August 22nd, day 91. Found Mason's old notes in his lighthouse keeper's shack. He was obsessed with legends of the traveler. Said the lighthouse wasn't just a light for ships, but a boundary between the world and what lay beyond. He mentioned the whispers. Thought it was just old man's ramblings. Now I'm not so sure. Mason was the only one who truly believed in something beyond. He warned us. The lighthouse. Liam suddenly felt a chilling cold. The lighthouse, the highest point on the island, the place from which Mason had disappeared. The voices had grown more insistent after Mason's disappearance, as if something that held them back was gone. The lighthouse had always shone. It was a symbol of safety, of hope. But what if its light wasn't just for ships? What if it kept something at bay? Liam decided. He would go to the lighthouse. The path to the lighthouse was strewn with debris. Old fishing nets washed ashore after some storm, and the fog here was thicker, almost tangible. It enveloped him like a wet blanket, seeping under his clothes, into his lungs. "Don't go there, Liam," Mason's voice whispered directly into his ear. It sounded concerned, yet somehow hollow. "There's nothing there, only emptiness. Come back. It's safe here." Liam couldn't tell if it was Mason's voice or just his own subconscious trying to protect him or lure him. He kept walking. The lighthouse loomed above him, a giant stone finger pointing into the fog. Its light had long since died. The door was ajar. Liam carefully pushed it open. Inside, it was dark and damp. A spiral staircase ascended somewhere, lost in the gloom. The steps creaked under his feet. With each step up, the voices grew louder, clearer. Now it wasn't just Mason. Dozens, hundreds of voices. They whispered, sang, laughed, cried, all at once. "Come to the light. It's waiting. It calls to you." He reached the top platform. The massive lighthouse lens, once gleaming, was now covered in dust and cobwebs, and something was on the floor. It was Mason's notebook, the last one, open to the final page. Liam picked it up with trembling hands. The handwriting was erratic, hurried as if Mason had written in agony. August 20th, day 89. They don't just call. They copy, absorb. I heard myself, my thoughts. He's becoming me. The lighthouse light is fading. I must leave. So he doesn't get everything, so he doesn't become me. Or us *. I see him, beyond the fog. He is not alone. There are millions. They are waiting. They want to come in. We are not just an island. We are a prison. For them. And the lighthouse, it's the key. When the light goes out, the entry abruptly ended. And in the margins, like a madman scribbles, was a strange symbol. A mark Liam had only seen once before. On an old stone at the very edge of the tide, which locals considered unlucky. The symbol looked like an eye surrounded by broken lines, resembling waves or rays. Liam felt a chill pierce him to the bone. The lighthouse, the key, the prison. He ran back into town, trying to find a way to gather the resistors. Now he understood. The fog wasn't just a weather phenomenon. It was a barrier, and the voices, they weren't just lures. It was something trying to understand, to copy, to absorb. Liam found Katie, the owner of the small library. She was one of the few who maintained a relative clarity of mind, immersing herself in old books. He showed her Mason's notes, the symbol. Katie recognized the symbol. This is an ancient ward. From the legends of the island's native people, it was used to protect against the ones from the sea. They said they could take any form, copy voices, to lure. The lighthouse? Was it a ward? Liam whispered. Perhaps, Katie nodded. Or its light, or Mason himself. He was the last of those who knew these old stories. He kept them inside him. He was a kind of barrier. They decided to gather all the resistors. The meeting of the resistors was held in the old town hall, a dilapidated building with peeling paint and boarded-up windows. About 20 people showed up, their faces gaunt with fear and fatigue. They sat in silence, their eyes darting nervously towards the windows, as if expecting the fog itself to materialize and snatch them away. Liam stood before them, Mason's notebook clutched in his hand. He spoke of the symbol, of the ancient ward, of Mason's chilling last words. He explained his theory. The lighthouse hadn't just been a guide, it had been a prison door, and Mason, unknowingly or knowingly, the last lock. The voices aren't just luring us, Liam said, his voice raw. They're studying us. They're trying to become us, to replace us. Mason understood this. He let himself be taken, perhaps, to keep them from getting everything. A woman named Sarah, a former teacher, spoke up. Her voice trembled. But what can we do? We're just waiting to be picked off. We fight back, Liam declared, though his own heart pounded. We find out what happens when they take someone. We find out what they are, and we try to reignite the lighthouse. A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Reigniting the lighthouse seemed like a suicidal act. It was a beacon that would announce their presence, a challenge to the unknown. But if it held them back before, Katie interjected, her eyes alight with a desperate hope. Maybe it can again, or maybe it can show us a way out. They decided it was a long shot, but it was their only shot. Their plan was desperate, bordering on suicidal. Liam, Katie, and Sarah would venture into the most fog-choked part of the island, near where the ancient stone with the symbol lay. They hypothesized that this area was weakest, a potential entry point for whatever resided in the mist. Meanwhile, a small team would attempt to get the lighthouse generator working again. As they moved through the silent streets, the voices became a cacophony. Liam heard his mother, his father, distant cousins, forgotten classmates. They pleaded, cajoled, even threatened. You're going the wrong way, Liam. Come back. It's cold out there. So cold. Don't listen to him, Liam, Katie whispered, her face pale. They try to confuse you. Suddenly, Sarah gasped, clutching her head. Her eyes widened, focusing on something unseen in the fog. My daughter, she's crying. She needs me. She's saying she's lost in the old schoolhouse. Liam grabbed her arm. Sarah, no, Your daughter isn't here. She's safe, away from the island. But the voice, real only to Sarah, was too powerful. She tore free, stumbling towards a dense patch of fog. My baby! I'm coming! Liam tried to follow, but Katie held him back. It's too late, Liam. You'll be next. They watched in horror as Sarah disappeared into the grey curtain, her fading cries mingling with the distorted laughter that seemed to erupt from the mist. Another dot on Liam's map. Another life absorbed. The incident hardened their resolve. There was no going back now. They reached the ancient stone. It was larger than Liam remembered, covered in moss, with the eye symbol carved deep into its surface. The air here was thick and heavy, a palpable presence that pressed down on them. The voices were deafening, a roaring chorus of pleas and promises. "This is the source," Katie shouted over the noise, pointing at the stone. "The legends say it's a tear in the veil, a place where worlds meet." Just then, a faint, rhythmic thump, thump, thump echoed from the direction of the lighthouse. The generator! They had succeeded. As the sound grew louder, a strange phenomenon began. The fog around the stone began to shimmer, almost like a heat haze. The voices intensified, reaching a fever pitch of desperation, then they began to distort. The familiar cadences warped into guttural gurgles, the loving tones twisted into monstrous roars. And then, through the shimmering mist, they saw them. Not ghosts, not illusions. Figures. They were tall, gaunt, indistinct, like shadows stretched thin and given form. Their shapes shifted, elongated, then contracted, never quite solid, always fluid. They had no discernible features, no eyes, no mouths, yet Liam felt an oppressive, cold sentience emanating from them. They were not human. They were echoes. Or perhaps the true form of the things that had been copying the islanders. They were moving towards the stone, drawn to it like moths to a dying flame. Or perhaps repelled by the reawakening lighthouse. The rhythm of the generator became a steady hum, and then a faint glow appeared above the lighthouse. The light! It was coming back! As the light strengthened, the figures screamed, a sound that was not a voice, but a tearing, ripping noise, like fabric being shred. They writhed, recoiled, pulling back from the glowing barrier that was slowly pushing them away. They were sensitive to the light, to the purity of its existence. But then, a terrible realization struck Liam. As the light grew, so did the intensity of the absorption. The shifting figures, as they recoiled, were pulling at the very fabric of the island's memories, its history. The buildings around them seemed to momentarily flicker, their paint changing, their windows distorting, as if their very essence was being scanned or copied at an accelerated rate. Katie cried out, pointing at the stone. The symbol on it was glowing faintly, responding to the lighthouse's new power. And from the very heart of the stone, a new voice emerged, deep and resonating, devoid of any human mimicry. It was a voice of immense, ancient power, a whisper that vibrated through Liam's bones. They leave, the essence remains. A copy. Always a copy. It wasn't a warning. It was a statement of fact. The lighthouse light fully returned, a blazing spear piercing the impenetrable fog. Its beam sliced through the grey, pushing back the shadows, revealing nothing but more mist beyond. The amorphous figures recoiled further, slowly fading back into the impenetrable grey, their horrifying screams diminishing to a faint, echoing wail. The immediate threat was gone. The voices in Liam's head subsided to a dull throb. The town was quiet again, save for the hum of the lighthouse generator. But the silence was no longer comforting. It was empty. Liam and Katie made their way back to town. The streets felt different. The houses looked the same, but the air was devoid of something. They passed Evelyn's house. Her door was still open. They found the waiters. They were sitting on their porches, in their living rooms, staring blankly ahead. No fear, no hope, just nothing. Their eyes were vacant, their expressions serene, almost peaceful. They seemed to have lost all memory of the past 3 months, perhaps even longer. They remembered their names, how to breathe, how to perform basic functions, but their personalities, their memories, their very selves had been stripped away. They were just empty vessels. The voices had stopped for them. The light had pushed the things back, yes, but it had also acted as a catalyst. By fighting them, by forcing them to retreat, they had merely accelerated the process of their copying and absorption. Those who had been most susceptible to the voices, those who were closest to the edge, had been completely emptied. Their memories, their hopes, their fears, all of it had been extracted, copied and taken back into the fog by the retreating entities. The bodies remained, but the souls were gone. Liam looked at Katie. Her eyes were wide with dawning horror. "We didn't save them," she whispered, her voice cracking. "We helped them finish." The lighthouse, a symbol of hope, had become a tool for the enemy. It had driven them away, but not before they harvested what they came for. The next morning, the fog still clung to Silent Haven, as dense and impenetrable as ever. The lighthouse beam continued to cut through it, a lonely sentinel against an unseen threat. Liam picked up his journal. He no longer marked disappearances. Instead, he began to write. September 1st, day 101. The silence is louder than the screams. They are gone, but they took everything. We are safe for now. Safe, but empty. The lighthouse protects us, keeping them out. But what is left to protect? What is left inside? We are echoes of a memory, a copy of a copy. And the fog is always listening, always waiting.